Hello and welcome back to another lecture. In this lecture, we will use Terraform Module to create the security groups for our project. To create our security groups, the first thing I want you to do is open your project folder. Once you've opened your project folder, we will create another folder in our Modules folder. In the Modules folder, right-click on it and select New Folder and name the folder Security Groups. Once you've named your folder, press Enter. We will use this Security Groups folder to store our Security Groups module. The next thing I want you to do is right-click on this Security Groups folder and select New File. The first file we will create in this folder is our main file, so call that file main.tf. Once you've named your file, press Enter. Then right-click on the Security Groups folder again and select New File. The second file we will create is our variables file. Call the file variables.tf. Once you've named your file variables.tf, press Enter. Right-click on the Security Groups folder again and select New File. The third file we will create is our outputs file, so call it outputs.tf. Once you've named your file, press Enter. These are the three files we will use to create our Security Groups module. The next thing I want you to do is close the outputs.tf file for now. Then I want you to take the variables.tf file, click it and hold it, then drag it somewhere here and drop it there. So that way you can split your screen into two. On the right side, we have our variables.tf file, and on the left side, we have our main.tf file. The next thing I want you to do is download and open the reference file I created for this lecture in this video's description. This is the reference file we will use to create our security group module. And in this reference file, I've included the resource type and arguments that we need. Select everything in this reference file. I'll click Ctrl A. Once you've selected everything, right-click to copy it. Once you've copied it, close the reference file, and in your main.tf file, paste it in there. Once you've pasted the syntax, scroll all the way up. I'm going to close the Explorer so I have more space on my screen. We only need to create two security groups for the ECS project. The first security group, we call it Application Load Balancer Security Group. This is the resource type to create a security group, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument we have is name, and for the name of the security group, I called it Application Load Balancer Security Group. You can also change the name to any name you want. The second argument is description, and I have entered the description here. The third argument is the VPC ID, and this is the ID of the VPC we want to create the security group in. I'm going to open the Explorer for now. And remember, we created our VPC in the VPC module. I'll select the VPC module here. And in the VPC module, we export the value of our VPC ID in the outputs file. I'll select the outputs file. In the outputs file, this is the syntax we use to export the value of our VPC ID. So what we have to do is copy the name of that outputs. Once you copy the name, come back to your main.tf file. Under VPC ID, we will reference it by typing var dot and paste the name of that output there. This is how we reference the VPC ID in our VPC module. Once you've referenced the ID here, don't forget to add it to your variables file. So in here, we will type variable. Once you type variable, give the variable a name, and the name of the variable will be VPC ID. So I'll paste the name there again. Once you've pasted the name there, let's close this bracket like this. The next argument we will enter are the ingress rule, and these are the rules that will allow us to open the ports we need. The first port we will open is port 80. So for the description, I have entered HTTP access. The next argument is from port. For the from port, type 80. And for the to port, type 80 as well. For the protocol, type TCP. And for the CIDR block, we are going to allow this rule to accept traffic from anywhere on the internet. The traffic coming from anywhere on the internet is 0.0.0.0/0. In bracket, we will type it in here. The next ingress rule we will open is for HTTPS, and for the description, I have entered HTTPS access. For the from port, we will enter 443. For the to port, we will also enter 443. For the protocol, we will enter TCP. And for the CIDR blocks, we will also allow this rule to accept traffic coming from anywhere on the internet. So that will be 0.0.0.0/0. So what you can do is copy this up here and paste it here. The last rule we will enter is the egress rule. For the egress rule, the from port is going to be 0. The to port will be 0. The protocol will be -1. And the CIDR blocks is also going to be anywhere on the internet, which is similar to what we did up here. So you can copy this and paste it here. The next argument we will enter for this security group is tags. And for the tag name, we will call it Application Load Balancer Security Group. The next syntax will create the security group that we will use for the container. For the security group, this is the resource type that will create it, and this is the reference name I've given it. The first argument we entered here is the name, and this is the name of the security group. If you want to change the name, you can do that. The next argument is the VPC ID, and this is the ID of the VPC we want to create this security group in. Remember, we referenced the VPC ID up here. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. The next argument we will enter are the ingress rule, and these are the ports we want to open. The first ingress rule we will open is on port 80, and for the description, I have entered HTTP access. For the from port, type 80. For the to port, type 80. For the protocol, we will enter TCP. And for the security groups, this is the security group we will allow traffic from if the traffic is coming on port 80 into our container. The security group we will allow traffic from is the Application Load Balancer Security Group. We created the Application Load Balancer Security Group up here. So copy the resource type and the reference name. Once you copy it, come back down here. In brackets, paste it in there. Once you've pasted it, remove the double quotes, add a period, come all the way to the end, add another period and type ID. The next ingress rule we will open is on port 443, and for the description, I have entered HTTPS access. For the from port, enter 443. For the to port, enter 443. For the protocol, it is going to be TCP. And for the security groups, we will also allow traffic coming on port 443 to our container if that traffic is coming from the Application Load Balancer Security Group. So just like we did here, copy your Application Load Balancer Security Group here and paste it here. The next argument we will enter is the egress rule, and for the from port, we will type 0. For the to port, we will also type 0. For the protocol, it is going to be -1. And for the CIDR blocks, this is going to allow traffic to anywhere on the internet. We referenced it up here. So I'm just going to copy this and come back down here and paste it there. The last argument we will enter is tags, and for the tag name, we will call it ECS security group. This is all we need to do to create the security groups module. The next thing we need to do is export the ID of the application load balancer security group and the ID of the ECS security group. The reason why we are exporting the ID of our security groups is because we will use it when we create other resources. To export the ID of our security groups, on the right side of your screen, click in here. Then in your security groups module, select the outputs.tf file. Once you select the outputs.tf file, it will open it here. I'm going to drag this a little bit to create more space. The first output we will create will export the ID of the application load balancer security group. So what I want you to do is type output in here. Once you've created your output block, we will give it a name. The name of this output, we will call it application load balancer security group ID. So I'll call it something like this. This is the name we will use for this output. Once you have entered the name, click down here. The next thing we are going to enter is the value. So type value in here. Once you type value, press space and equal sign and another space. Then the value we want to export is the ID of the application load balancer security group. So let's come to our main.tf file, scroll up. This is where we created the application load balancer security group. So what you will do is copy the resource type and the reference name. Once you copy it, paste it here. I'm going to drag this so you can see it better. Once you've pasted it, remove the double quotes, add a period, then come all the way to the end, add another period and type ID. This is all we need to do to export the ID of the application load balancer security group. The next syntax we will create will export the value of our ECS security group. So what I want you to do is press enter here twice, then copy this output syntax and paste it down here. The next thing we will do is modify it. For the output name, we will call it ECS security group ID. So change the ALB to ECS. And for the value, we will reference the ID of the ECS security group. Let's scroll down in the main.tf file. This is where we created the ECS security group. So copy the resource type and the reference name. Once you copy it, we are going to replace this value here. Once you've pasted there, remove the double quote, add a period, and come all the way to the end, add another period and type ID. This is all we need to do to export the ID of the application load balancer security group and the ECS security group. We will need this ID when we create other resources. This is all we need to do to create the security groups module. Once you've created the module, the next thing I want you to do is save your file. Select File and select Save All. Once you have saved your file, close the outputs.tf file here and also close the outputs.tf file here and your main.tf file. The next thing we will do is we will use this security groups module to create the security groups for our project. To reference this security groups module, open your project folder. My project folder is the folder I called Jupyter Website ECS, and in this folder, select the main.tf file. Once you select the main.tf file, in this file is where we will use our security groups module to create the security groups in our AWS account. To reference the security groups module, take the variables.tf file, drag it somewhere here, and drop it there. to split the screen. The next thing you are going to do is scroll down on your main.tf file. And down here, press enter twice. This is where we will create the module to reference the security group module. To create the module, we will start by typing module. Once you type module, to create the module block, press enter. The next thing you will do is give this module a name, and we'll call the module security group. Once you've given your module a name, click down here. The first argument we will enter down here is the source. This is very important. For every module you create, the first argument you have to enter is the source. So let's type source in here. Once you type source, press the space bar and equal sign and the space bar again. For the source, we will reference the location of our security groups module. To reference the location, we will type double quotes and 2 period. The 2 period means that you want Terraform to go up 2 directories. So right now, we are in the Jupyter website ECS folder. You want Terraform to go from this folder into the modules folder. That is why we have 2 dots in here. After the 2 dots, we will enter /. The next thing we will enter is the name of the modules folder. We call the modules folder modules, so enter modules in here. When you type the name of your modules folder, make sure you type the same exact name you named the folder. Once you've typed the modules folder, enter another /. Then the next thing we will enter is the module we want to reference in this folder. In the modules folder, we want to reference our security groups module. So in here, we will type security groups the same exact way we named it here. Once you've typed the path to your security groups module, press enter here. The next argument we will enter here is our VPC ID. Remember when we create the security groups module, in the variables.tf file, we have a variable in there that we call VPC ID. So any variables you have in the variables.tf file in your module, that is what you reference here. For this variables.tf file, we only have one variable in there, and that is the VPC ID. So here, I'm going to copy this name and paste it here. Once you paste it, press space and enter equal sign and space again. For the value of our VPC ID, remember we created our VPC in the VPC module. So to reference the ID of the VPC, you will come down here. The first thing we will type is module. Once you type module, press period, then type VPC. The VPC we just typed here is the name of our VPC module. When we created this VPC, we need to get the ID of this VPC. So that is what we are referencing here. Once you've entered the VPC, add another period. And the name of the attribute we want to get is the VPC ID. So copy this and paste it here. This is all we need to do to write the syntax to create our security group. The next thing I want you to do is save your file. Select File and select Save All. Once you've saved your file, close your variable.tf file. Next, we will create the security groups in our AWS account. To create the security groups, select your project folder. I called my project folder Jupyter Website ECS. Select it. Once you select your project folder, right-click on it and select Open in Integrated Terminal. Once you've opened the terminal to your project folder, the first thing we will do is initialize. So we will type Terraform init. Once you type Terraform init, press enter. There you go, we have successfully initialized with our AWS environment. The next command we will type to create the security group in our AWS account is Terraform apply. So type Terraform apply. Once you type Terraform apply, press enter. When you type Terraform apply and press enter, the first thing Terraform will do is show you the plan. And for this plan, Terraform is telling you it will create 2 resources in your AWS account. You can review the resources that Terraform will create here. Once you have reviewed the resources, scroll back down. Terraform is asking you, do you want to perform these actions? We will type yes here and press enter. Terraform is now creating the security groups in our AWS account. We'll give it some time to finish creating it. And there you go, that was fast. Terraform has finished creating the security group in my AWS account. Let's go to the management console to verify that the security groups are there. In the management console, type VPC in the search box and select VPC under services. On the VPC dashboard, the first thing we will do is filter by our VPC. Select this drop down and select your Jupyter VPC. Once you've selected your VPC, scroll down. Under security, select security groups. And this is going to show you just the security groups that are in your VPC. In our VPC, you can see the ECS security group we just created and the application load balancer security group we just created. If I select the application load balancer security group and I'll select inbound rules, I'm going to drag this up. You can see the 2 rules. One is on HTTP port 80 and the source is anywhere on the internet. The other one is HTTPS port 443 and the source is anywhere on the internet. Let's select our ECS security group. Once you select the ECS security group, for the inbound rule, we have HTTP on port 80 and the source is coming from the application load balancer security group. If you drag this out here, you will see it. You can see application load balancer security group. For the second rule on HTTPS on port 443, it is coming from application load balancer security group. The 2 security groups we just created using Terraform module are right. The next thing we need to do is go back into our Terraform file and push our code to the GitHub repository. In our Terraform file, to push our code to the GitHub repository, select source control here. Then type a message here. I'll type create security group. Once you type your message, click this check mark to commit it. Once you've committed, click sync changes to push the changes to your GitHub repository. We have successfully pushed the update to our GitHub repository. The next thing we will do is go into our GitHub repository to verify that it is there. In my GitHub account, select this icon here, and on the home page, we will select the Terraform Modules repository. In the Terraform Modules repository, select Modules, and there you go. In there, you can see the security groups module. If you select the folder, in it you will see the main.tf, outputs.tf, and variables.tf file we created. This is how you use Terraform module to create security groups. If you have any questions or there's any part of this lecture you don't understand, please leave your comments below. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.